Okay, thank you guys. Thank you everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce John Cannella, who is a National Program Manager at the National Trail System and National Wild and Scenic Rivers System at Washington, D.C. At Washington, D.C. Support Office of the National Park Service. For more than 15 years, John has valued collaborating and partnering with others across numerous landscapes and communities of our nation through various roles related to the National Trail System. Prior to joining the National Park Service, John worked for other federal agencies, universities, and nonprofit organizations. He has held positions on varied topics that have included trails, rivers, GIS, recreation, natural and cultural resources management, and ecology. It is my pleasure to have him to introduce him, and I'm grateful for John to make time to present today at Alaska Trails Conference. I met John through a couple of Zoom sessions, meetings over the past couple of years when we tried to learn more information about the National Scenic Trail designation, and John has been very helpful. And I met him in person, which is always fun, at the Partnership for the National Trail System conference last November to learn more from National Scenic Trails and National Historic Trails and how they operate, administrate, managed. It's a fun group of people. Well, thank you, John. The screen is yours.
Well, thanks, Miriam. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Yes.
All right. Well, yeah, thanks again for the invitation. It's wonderful to be with all of you today. Of course, it's always better to be in person, but hopefully this will do. Really look forward to talking to you. I know I was asked to talk a little about National Scenic Trails and some of the roles and responsibilities tied to National Scenic Trails. Today, I hope to give a little bit of background on the National Trail System and talk a little bit about some of the different trail types, and then shift into some of the questions that are more specific to some of those roles and responsibilities for some of those congressionally designated National Scenic and National Historic Trails. And I hope that's going to work for the group. I'm going to be probably aiming for a high-level overview of some of these pieces. Thanks for your patience with technology. Okay. So back in the 1960s, there were a lot of activities, Trails for America, some different reports on trails and outdoor recreation, leading up to 1968. October 2nd, the National Trail System Act was signed into law, and that policy statement or that public purpose at the beginning of the act is a bit of a timeless one, looking to address those ever-increasing outdoor recreation needs of an expanding population, promoting preservation, public access to, travel within, enjoyment, appreciation of those open air outdoor areas, and the historic resources of the nation. Now, while the act was first established back in '68, it's been amended and it's been evolving, and the system has been growing over time. What started with two National Scenic Trails back in 1968, with the Appalachian National Scenic Trail and the Pacific Crest National Scenic Trail, has expanded into 32 National Scenic and National Historic Trails that are currently recognized today, spanning every state in the nation, including the District of Columbia. We're seeing significant mileage. Bigger than the U.S. interstate system, with almost 90,000 miles when you're looking at the three primary types of trails that are in the system, with that being the National Scenic and National Historic Trails, and then also the National Recreation Trails. So this is one of those maps you'll see. This is a recently updated interagency map for the National Trail System, focusing again on those National Scenic and National Historic Trails, with some of the recent additions within the last few years. The system welcomed the Butterfield Overland National Historic Trail, passing through the southern end of the lower 48, as well as the Chilkoot National Historic Trail up in Alaska. The system connects over 6,000 communities or passes nearby, and just has tremendous reach. Those corridors of recreation and historic appreciation. I mentioned that the system has been changing, and so from going from two national scenic trails in the beginning, 10 years later, in 1978, the National Trail System Act was amended to include or add that next class of trails, the National Historic Trails. And since then, we've seen this growth and seen this development and seen this change. But this map's only just showing part of the system. Let's see, please. Again, thanks for your patience as things move slowly. They're superimposed upon the existing map. You'll see a more robust depiction, again, of those primary trail types that are in the National Trail System. This adds the more than 1,300 national recreation trails. Those are secretarially designated trails, like you saw on the cover slide, to the system, and that adds, again, some additional mileage. And the system today is looking at close to or closing in on around 90,000 miles of designated trails between congressionally and secretarially designated trails. So national scenic trails are extended trails over 100 miles long or longer, continuous, primarily non-motorized routes of outstanding recreational opportunity. Right now, we observe 11 national scenic trails, 6 being administered through the U.S. National Park Service, and then 5 administered through the U.S. Forest Service. The designation often comes, just like each trail comes, with unique authorities or parameters. And several of the trails still are in development, working through some of those connectivities, gaps and development or slight adjustments or reroutes. It's a continual work in progress for each individual trail in the system and the system itself. Been primarily human powered, usually hiking, biking, horseback riding. I'd say biking, it varies depending on some of those trails. And outstanding opportunities for recreational opportunity. National Historic Trails, and these are 2 trail types that are both congressionally designated trail types. Recognize those original trails or routes of national historic significance, which may include past routes of exploration, migration, military action. Right now, there are 21 in the system, with 17 being solely administered by the National Park Service as that federal trail administrator, 2 that are co-administered with the Bureau of Land Management and the National Park Service, 1 by the Bureau of Land Management there in Alaska with the Iditarod, and then 1 administered by the U.S. Forest Service. Again, similar to national scenic trails, each time a trail is added to the National Trail System, the National Trail System Act is amended, and the language, the directives for each one of those trails and the parameters are amended to the act. National Historic Trails, they should follow as closely as possible those original routes of historic significance. The purpose, identification, protection of those historic routes for public use and enjoyment. Federal protection components for these exist on those federal lands and waters where the trails are designated. And there's a different process for certifying some of the segments along these trails. We've seen that both for some national historic trails and even for some national scenic trails through trail administration. And we'll talk a little bit about some of those roles, 2 being trail administration and trail management as we get a little bit further in. I have to use this as an opportunity. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about national recreation trails. Again, there's 1,300 existing land and water-based national recreation trails spanning the country. These provide some of that close to home recreational trail access opportunities on federal, state, and other lands. The designation helps to promote some of those outdoor opportunities. We work with American Trails as one of the partners tied to National Recreation Trails, including National Water Trails, which was a subset of National Recreation Trails. And there's a couple different pathways for designation. These are secretarially designated trails. So the U.S. Forest Service leads for the U.S. Department of Agriculture the designation process on a rolling basis through coordination with the U.S. Forest Service on USDA lands, mainly U.S. Forest Service. And then the U.S. Department of Interior has authority to establish or designate national recreation trails on essentially all other lands. And there's an application process with an annual deadline of November 1st each year. And there's more information that's up on the NRT database website, and they'll provide some other links later on for the application process, for some information related to the criteria and some other FAQs. We're taking a look at Alaska. I think there's 18 national recreation trails that have been established and recognized over time. These are existing trails that go through that application process with a commitment to public access for the next decade, coordination with all the landowners as part of the application process, and several other elements. Again, I'd be remiss not to mention this and encourage folks to learn more across the trails community. Throughout the National Trail System, partnerships and volunteerism are essential components. This is an excerpt out of the National Trail System Act, where Congress recognized those valuable contributions that we all know in the trails community for volunteers that they make for private groups, nonprofit trail groups, and others in the development, the maintenance, and establishment of our nation's trails. And the Act further encourages that inclusion and that encouragement and assistance for volunteers to help where appropriate for planning, development, maintenance, and management along the trails. And it has impact. We've seen that while some of these numbers are a little bit older in time, going back a few years, we see significant or almost extreme volunteerism along the national trails, likely underreported numbers across the national trail system, but significant always for that monetary or in-kind contribution that we see in volunteer time and other commitments and other resources. And the National Trail System sees, just like trails usually do in general, just amazing resource leveraging and those contributions when you start to break down some of the different contribution sectors through that pie chart down in the lower left gives an example, again, a little bit older for time, but some metrics on some of that impact that we see across the system. There's different examples, different ways that partners lift the National Trail System every day. In the past, there's been examples for conservation, for helping to assemble some different land and water conservation fund requests and proposals and packages to help protect or conserve or provide public access to segments along the different trail types in the system. We've even seen interesting examples of folks and the resourcefulness in some of the metropolitan areas, urban areas, and other areas for how they've significantly contributed to individual trails or multiple national scenic or national historic trails or national recreation trails. There are a range of partners in the National Trail System, and everything goes back to that National Trail System Act. I would always encourage folks to reflect on that act. Again, we'll continue to talk a little bit more about administration and management, two different roles in the National Trail System, but it's a collaborative effort. It's a participatory system for the National Trail System with opportunities for that coordination with tribes, states, local governments, nonprofit organizations, businesses, the private sector, educational institutions, volunteers, and federal agencies. On the federal side, there's been a series of different memorandums of understandings or different kinds of agreements that have helped to facilitate the interagencies National Trail System Council that's met. Currently, there are 7 different agencies and 4 different federal departments that are tied to that council. It used to be called the Federal Interagency Council on Trails. It was renamed during that last update of that memorandum of understanding to the National Trail System Council, still an interagency group. Within that, there's additional coordination for consistency with some subgroups tied to that, the National Trail Administrators Roundtable with the lead federal trail administrator for each one of the National Scenic or National Historic Trails. There's also a convening of a National Recreation Trail Roundtable with some of the agency leads tied to national recreation trails. There's an array of national nonprofit partners that have different roles in the system and many, many more. So we're gonna skip back to National Scenic Trails, and again, focus on those extended lengths, over 100 miles in length, located to provide for maximum outdoor recreational potential and for the conservation and enjoyment of nationally significant scenic, historic, natural, cultural qualities of the areas through which the trails shall pass. Straight from the National Trail System Act. For these congressionally designated trails, National Scenic and National Historic Trails, there's a typical 4-step process for how they get evaluated and how they come to be. That first step is congressional action or a law being passed requesting, directing a feasibility study to be conducted. That second step is a feasibility study or national trail feasibility study is conducted. It's conducted based on criteria that's listed and included in the National Trail System Act. And then the studies and the findings are transmitted to Congress. Third step would require additional congressional action, another law to establish or to designate a national scenic or national historic trail. As mentioned, then that amends the National Trail System Act. When that occurs, and a description of new trails would get added in describing the geography, perhaps the nature and purpose, additional background, describing each individual trail. And then later, after activation, there's a shift into some of the next steps for starting up a national scenic trail. One of the primary next steps is to initiate development of a comprehensive plan for the trail, a trail-wide plan that would lay out the vision and standards and guidance that other plans would subsequently tier from. And this is usually done in concert with an advisory council. Also, the National Trail System Act is directions to establish a federal advisory council for trails. And we've seen that done in the past, and those councils have been set up by the different secretaries with different participants, and they've helped to shape the future direction of the trail. So now we're going to talk a little about trail administration and then trail management. These are a couple of those key roles. And for trail administration, I would encourage folks to think about that as a trail-wide coordinating role or responsibility. And this has been delegated to the 2 different departments, U.S. Department of Agriculture, and then to the U.S. Forest Service, or to the U.S. Department of Interior, and either to the Bureau of Land Management or to the National Park Service for taking on those roles. So it's one of those 3 agencies that is the federal trail administrator for each of the national scenic trails or national historic trails. And they have, again, trail-wide responsibilities at a higher level for coordination and planning. They would lead development of that comprehensive plan for the trail. for sustaining trail partnerships with the array of managers and owners and others along what are almost always multi-jurisdictional trails that are complex. Assist with some of the oversight of trail site and segment protection, development, conservation measures, assist with development of those maintenance standards for the trail, official trail marking. The Federal Trail Administrator is usually the lead for authorized use of that rounded triangle that would get developed as the trail gets initiated for that official marker. Of course, there's other blazes that are used for each individual trail. Again, it depends. Each trail can be unique and have its own parameters. Again, they assist with some of that land protection planning, identifying what might be some of the higher level needs. Again, in concert with others, they assist with trail segment certification, resource protection, promotion of recreation access, may assist or lead some trail-wide resource and viewshed inventories and mapping. GIS is an important tool in the process, assisting with interpretation, education, agreements. Again, because the multi-jurisdictional and complex patchwork of most of these extended trails, there are a lot of different folks that are involved. And agreements are incredible tools. And there's some authorities within the National Trail System Act for cooperative agreements. We'll talk about those in a little bit, as well as interagency agreements and other ways to be able to assist or to cooperate amongst others. Coordinating some of the volunteer contributions or tracking that may be another opportunity for trail administration. Again, some of that high level reporting and metrics for each one of the trails. Often, again, that may happen through a lead partner or a series of partners or others. So these are just some of the responsibilities that do align with trail administration. Kind of linked to cooperative agreements, federal trail administrators through cooperative agreements, or perhaps through some other means, may be able to provide financial assistance or limited financial assistance to others, whether cooperating government agencies, landowners, interest groups, or individuals, to help with that realization of each trail. Trail management is the other main responsibility, and this is that local, on the ground, that direct management responsibility, which in some cases overlaps with the Federal Trail Administrator, where the federal agency may have ownership of that same segment or the same stretch. But often it may be another agency, it may be another government, it may be a private landowner, it may be many others that would be responsible for trail management. And some of their responsibilities could include resource inventorying, some of that local site development planning, or segment development planning for the trail, the local compliance with state and other environmental requirements, assistance to avoid or mitigate some resource damage, or to harmonize with that upper level comprehensive plan, providing public access for the trail, assisting with that recreation management, in some cases personal services or assistance with interpretation and education, marking and maintenance along the trail for blazing the trail, for maintaining the marks, for establishing some of the official trail markers where appropriate. Again, some of these things vary depending on each one of the trails. Assisting with some of the other resource protection or conservation for national scenic trails, looking at the view shed along the trails, first part of that visitor experience. Often management of visitor use. Other responsibilities could include search and rescue or other on the ground local needs, local management issues that you would typically find along most trails in general. But this is more local, on the ground, direct management by the landowner, by others that are participating in the trail, versus trail administration that's been assigned to federal agencies. That's more of that trail-wide coordinating role. So at a high level, there's three types of guiding plans for national scenic trails. The higher level trail guiding plan would be the comprehensive plan for the National Scenic Trail. And those get established within the first couple of years of following designation of a National Scenic Trail. And there's a description in the National Trail System Act for the components and the requirements, or the minimum requirements for a comprehensive plan. Those include a plan for the acquisition and the management, development, use of the trail, identifying what are going to be recommendations for the management, identification of the significant natural and historical cultural features along the trail, acquisition and protection plans for the upcoming fiscal years for the trail, and may describe or include other items that are general or more site specific, along with some of the anticipated costs and estimates for realizing the trail. Land management plans, these would be more like, say, forest management plans or resource management plans that you might see among some of the federal agencies. You may have those from some of the state agencies. Would usually address the more direct on-the-ground management of the land, of the trail, the surrounding land, often around the trail, and would lay out how management is going to happen. Ideally, there is a tiering, and the other plans harmonize with a comprehensive plan for each national scenic trail. The third type of plan would be project plans, or those more localized site-specific plans for projects or activities. Again, hopefully these all harmonize back up to that trail-wide vision, the trail-wide comprehensive plan. So there are a lot of tools that are in the National Trail System Act for working with others throughout our directives to work together and work with others, just to assist with a little more clarity on cooperative agreements. These are legal instruments or legal agreements that outline the responsibilities of two or more parties. They may provide limited financial assistance to encourage or to support participation in that acquisition, protection, operation, development, or maintenance of the trails. There's a key piece for cooperative agreements is that there's both public benefit and that there's substantial involvement by a federal partner, usually the Federal Trail Administrator or the agency for a cooperative agreement to take place. If there may be just public benefit, then that would shift in opposed to having that collaborative or cooperative agreement with their substantial involvement, more to a grant type activity. And you can learn more if you're interested or more in the background by going to websites like grants.gov to see how cooperative agreements have been evolving over time and some of the different ones that are out there. When it comes to national trails, specifically in the National Trail System Act, cooperative agreements are in several different sections. There's some different references, but we've seen success for cooperative agreements to be used to provide for public access and commitments for protection and public use with landowners along the trail. Cooperative agreements have been helpful for marking along the trails, developing cooperative agreements over the years with different states or different other groups to help with installing uniform markers along national scenic trails and others. They've helped with maintenance, and again, that public access, maintaining what's needed for ideal visitor experiences along the trails. And then also to help with recognizing some of the cooperative activities at sites and segments trail-wide. There's a lot of different ways cooperative agreements have been used, but it all gets back to assisting in that acquisition, the protection, the operation, the development, and the maintenance of each one of the trails. And with that, I just like to again thank you for some time today at your conference. Whenever there are questions related to the National Trail System Act, we encourage folks to reflect on the National Trail System Act. We can provide a link back to the act that's up in the U.S. Code. Each one of the federal agencies that has a role in federal trail administration has got a website with some different materials and background and some supporting information that could be of assistance when trying to do some additional research or look for trails of interest or places to go. The National Park Service has got a site, the Bureau of Land Management's got a site, the U.S. Forest Service has got a site. And then the NRT, that National Recreation Trail Database, is another place where you can see the current listing, that current registry of trails that have been designated over time across the nation. And then my email address is here as well. And yeah, again, just appreciate that chance to talk with you and talk about a few different points tied to the National Trail System, some of that background, and some of the questions I was asked to explore for National Scenic Trails.
Thank you, John. Yep. Well, are there any questions? All right, okay. Hold on just a second. The microphone is running. What steps then?
I understand that at times it's taken up to like 9 years for a comp plan to get completed. So my question concerns the time between when a trail is named a scenic trail and when these various plans get done, the comp plan, the land management plan, and the project plans. How can trail proponents such as Alaska Trails responsibly move forward with projects before these plans are completed?
John, did you hear the question?
I can't hear.
Okay, yeah, I'll repeat. So, given that there can be quite considerable time between the designation of the NST and the consequent comprehensive trail management plan, it can take quite a bit of time. How can proponents of the trails, such as Alaska Trails and other organizations, how can they continue working on the trail development responsibly while waiting for the comprehensive trail management plan to come to exist? Is that accurate? Okay.
Is this can I ask a clarifying question? Is that is this a question for a trail that's been designated as the comprehensive plan gets developed?
Well, the comprehensive plan gets developed after the designation. So in the meantime, while we're waiting, in some cases, as we know, the plans take quite a bit of time to get developed, like in the case of the Pacific Northwest Trail. So how can we continue as proponents on the ground to work and on the trail, develop and secure funding and plan while waiting for the plan to come into reality?
Yeah, good question. I I guess I would say, because this, I'll go back to this being kind of a hypothetical, there are a lot of trails that just get developed and planned with others, regardless of designations, and they move ahead. So I think we see that happen in different places. For again, I'm just throwing out a generic trail that is under I guess if it, yeah, I guess I would say I don't have a really good answer for that question, because that's kind of blurring things that are proposed for different designations, but it seems like trails get developed and planned for over time by different communities and different advocates. If it is some trail that was getting proposed and was designated, it's really important to develop that comprehensive plan. In the past, there have been advisory councils that would help shape what those comprehensive plans would look like and establish what that vision is going to look like. So that's where it's really hard to speak to what's responsible, if that was the one of the terms used in the question, versus what's not. It's hard to know what's going to be in that vision for a future trail, or what might happen for, I'll say, trail ABC that's being proposed until it gets designated, until it gets planned for, with what that overarching vision is actually going to be for it. It's hard to speculate.
Well, it sounds like maybe we can, yeah, we can continue planning for the trail, and then see if it, if our work gets included in the comprehensive trail plan, let's say, when that happens. So it may or may not. Anyway, I'm sorry. Does it make sense? Yeah, anyway.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I can't
yeah.
speak to trails that are under study or proposed.
Right.
That's where it makes this really kind of awkward and hard to respond to.
Absolutely. Let's see if we have other questions. Yeah. Oh, hold on.
Are there many trails that are in this limbo period in between being designated by Congress and have yet to be developed with CMP?
Are there trails that have been designated and still don't have the comprehensive plan right now?
There are some that where the comprehensive plan is underway, or it's in progress, where the trails are in progress of securing resources to complete the comprehensive plans.
Can you name those? Which trails are those?
Yeah, two that come to mind are the well, there's a couple that just recently completed their comprehensive plans. I think the Arizona National Scenic Trail and Pacific Northwest National Scenic Trails just recently completed theirs. And then the Potomac Heritage National Scenic Trail and the New England National Scenic Trails, their comprehensive plans are in progress now. Or they're in the initial stages.
Thank you, John. More questions? Any questions? Well, I have a question. So we've been hearing from some Alaska residents that specific concerns that relate to policy changes on non-federal lands in regards to access, type of use, motorized hunting, trapping. With that, we're wondering if you could speak about the actual powers that the trail administrator and federal administrative agency have in changing land use policies, setting regulations and specifications for trail design, setting restrictions on use and access on non-federal lands. You mentioned cooperative agreements, but I'm wondering Yeah, can you speak to that? And in case the cooperative agreements.
Sure.
are not put in
Typically
place as well.
So typically it comes back to those two different roles that exist. There's trail administration, which has been delegated to federal agencies as that trail-wide coordination responsibility. And then there's management, and that management entity is usually the one that would set direction. If it's a federal agency, it'd be based on that direction for that federal agency, but it may be someone else, or another entity, or another government, or whatever it may be that would be setting some of that direction. So those access and change questions, it would depend on that agency, that federal agency. If it was both the administrator and the management, they would be the ones that would be setting that direction related to the trail and access and uses in some of the surrounding areas.
And if the non-federal land manager is not interested in entering into a cooperative agreement with that federal agency, what happens next?
Could you help me understand what in this scenario, what?
So if a
that-
land, let's say, state of Alaska decides not to enter into a cooperative agreement with whoever the federal administrative agency might be for the potential National Scenic Trail, what is the course of action if that happens from the federal agency? Let's say, yeah. If there is no willingness to enter into a cooperative agreement, because those are voluntary, right?
For a trail that's passing
Mhm.
across, say, a state area or state
Yes.
land.
Yes. Mhm.
Well, I guess clarification would be that cooperative agreements, they have been used with different entities. I've seen them used with private landowners and some others for access with states. We've seen other kinds of agreements, just general agreements or memorandums of understanding like agreements for how the different entities would work together towards a trail. If again, hypothetically, if there's a landowner that's not interested in the trail or having a trail component, then there may be a gap in that trail, and there may be a need to explore alternatives for routing or for location or for other needs. If or the trail is going to remain in a place, or the proposed trail. Feels like a discussion that'd be needed.
Thanks, John. Any other questions? Oh, Mark?
Question is if these plans are finalized, the comp plan and the management plan, and the group wants to move forward with a particular project, say fill in 100-mile gap in the trail, what process has to be followed? What approvals have to be gotten to make sure that the project is consistent with these plans? That's my question. What's that process look like? What kind of stumbling blocks might we encounter before we move forward with the project?
Before the plan is put in place, has been put in place, or after the comprehensive plan
So
is?
you've already got it.
Oh, okay.
Got it.
Yeah.
Plan.
Mhm.
I don't know how you have a specific project plan for that, but
Mhm.
I'm just trying to
Yep.
understand the procedure we would have to go through to get a project plan.
Okay, so the question is about how, once the comprehensive trail plan is in place, what are the steps of, let's say, trail user organizations, trail entities that want to create a trail? What are the steps that they have to follow to be compliant with the comprehensive trail management plan?
Sorry, could you repeat that question? Is that to To develop the trail or to establish
yeah,
the trail
to
as
to
planned?
develop, yeah, to develop a trail segment that is in the plan. That's right. That,
To build trail.
yes, basically,
That
yes,
doesn't exist.
yeah.
So it seems like that would be done in close coordination with the trail, an administrator and the landowner, to again harmonize with design standards for some kind of consistency, where possible with what's outlined in that direction in the comprehensive plan.
So it has to follow the direction of the comprehensive plan. Nutshell. Okay, thank you. Yep. I think we are at time, and thank you so much, John. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah, thanks to Don for answering some specific questions on from a generalized 30,000 foot view. Those are, sorry if we stumped you on any of those or we got real specific. But yeah, thanks for being here. For everybody in the room, eat lunch. Everybody online, enjoy your lunch. If you're a vegetarian or gluten-free, your meals in the hallway. Please don't take those meals if you are not vegetarian or gluten-free. And we're gonna get back here at 1 o'clock for some super sexy economics. And then after that, we'll talk about more fun things like mountain biking and chainsaws and HVs. See you in a little bit.
Okay.